My name's Tyler Myers. I've lived in DC for about 6 years. I went to Clemson and then moved up here after school. Been involved with GCC for the last 3.5 years or so. And I think the big thing for me of what drew me to Form was in college I had a lot of really good formational community, both through campus ministries and then the church I was a part of. That's not really been a huge part of my experience in DC. There's been pockets of it, but it's not been a really consistent thing. So I think for me, I was jumping it in an opportunity I saw to have deep spiritual formation and community with other people. I think a disciple is someone that is following Jesus and learning from what he did and then trying to be like what Jesus would be if he were you. I think I can look back at the last 9 months and really see a shift in the way that I go about my daily life and the things I think about. When I think about when I started versus now, what are the things that I'm doing and what am I thinking about? That's vastly different than it was when I started. For me, what hit home the most was the importance of spiritual disciplines. I'm not a very disciplined person, and habit is not, and just having routines is not something that's really easy for me. And I think doing things like fasting and solitude, and at first how hard those were, was difficult, but then as you start to see the fruit that comes out of that, it makes those things feel worth it. And I think that has kind of translated, and I'm reading the Word more, reading a lot more books, spending a lot more time in solitude, just trying to be in the presence of God in a way that didn't mark my life prior to this experience. So I think some of the fruits of the spiritual disciplines for me, a lot of it is just reordering my desires. I think when I find myself just coasting through life, I think sometimes you see how apathy in one area can really invade a lot of the parts of your life that you don't even think it is. I think there's a similar piece to desire in that in the fasting and in the solitude, as you develop that desire in that moment, it starts to pervade your whole life. And so I think there's moments of I just think of being a non-anxious presence, that the moments when things are stressful, it came out of those moments of solitude early in the morning or stealing away in the middle of a work day and just having a little bit of time to just process and be with God. I think every single person grew immensely, and there was this camaraderie that happened, especially around when we were fasting together. Our group kept fasting for months after we finished that period, and it was our guys chat from the group, we would text prayer requests in the morning, and just that sense of we're in this together was really motivating, and also just it felt like a really good picture of what the body of Christ is supposed to be doing. Yeah, so I think one of the coolest things that came out of in my everyday life of Form was how much within our own church and then outside of the church, the things that were happening in Form seemed to keep coming up. And so one of the ones I can think of was with fasting. I remember hearing lots of people that were not in Form being oh, well, Form's fasting right now. I want to explore that and start talking about fasting. And then in an entirely separate area of my life, just friends and social circles were also starting to kind of get keyed in on fasting, and it would inevitably come up that I was doing that every week in Form. And just some of the really cool conversations that came out of that, and then being able to spur each other on, even outside of the structured environment, I think was one of the coolest real life applications I saw.